Hi, everyone. It's Janice from the Divorcing Religion podcast. I'm excited to tell you that my book is now for sale. It's called Divorcing Religion, a memoir and survival handbook. And I'll make sure you have a link in the notes for that. And also, I want to encourage you to like, subscribe, and become a member of my YouTube channel. Take care. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Divorcing Religion podcast. I'm your host, Janice Selby. I'm a registered professional counselor and a religious trauma recovery coach. Today's episode is part of my series, Strong Women in Secular Spaces. My guest today is someone I admire both personally and professionally, attorney Malkie Schwartz. In 2000, Malkie chose to leave her ultra-orthodox Jewish community and 3 years later founded Footsteps, the first organization in North America to help people who wish to leave the ultra-orthodox Jewish community and live in mainstream society. To date, Footsteps has served over 1,300 individuals. Like many of you, I first heard of Footsteps through the Netflix documentary One of Us in 2017. I was thrilled and humbled when a Footsteps representative reached out to me in 2021 as I was preparing to host the inaugural Conference on Religious Trauma. Thankfully, my interactions with Malkie continue today because she is also co-founder and board member of the Rights and Religions Forum. In 2023, the Rights and Religions Forum launched the Borgenicht Fellowship Program for community leaders. This first-of-its-kind program connects a diverse cohort of leaders who are challenging religious oppression and supporting the ability of individuals raised in insular religious groups to make personal choices and lead lives that reflect their personal values and beliefs. The fellowship program invests in their work and equips them with tools and resources to strengthen their efforts and maximize their impact. And I am proud to be a Borgenicht Fellow. Welcome, Malkie. It's good to see you again.
Thank you for having me.
We have we've got to know each other a little bit better over the last year or so since I became a Borgenicht Fellow. But I really have just had such admiration for you since I heard about Footsteps and that you were the founder. And that's also one reason I wanted to interview you, because I'm interested in speaking with women who are change makers, women who are investing in their communities and wanting to make a difference. And that's you. I feel like you and I are kindred spirits in the desires that we have to assist people wanting to live authentically rather than the way maybe that their parents and community have dictated that they must live.
It's really nice to be viewed as a kindred fellow sister and to be having this conversation with you.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for joining me because I do appreciate that you're very busy. I wonder, would you take a few minutes and tell us just a little bit about what it was like for you to leave your community? Because you weren't in your late 20s or even 30s at that time, were you? Were you younger in your early 20s? Please tell me.
So I left in my early 20s, and I was very fortunate to have family members who lived outside of the ultra-orthodox community, and they were extremely helpful and supportive. This included my grandmother, who was then diagnosed with cancer shortly after I moved in with her and passed. And at that point, actually at the point in time when she was already sick, I began to have a unique appreciation for what she had done for me and realized that I just wanted everyone who was trying to leave an insular religious community to have a grandmother like I had. And the early days of Footsteps, she was the model. It was just like, how could we provide a grandma, a loving, accepting grandma to as many people as possible?
That's so beautiful. I love that. And had your grandmother come out of an ultra-Orthodox community as well?
She didn't. My parents became religious later on in their later on in their lives. So yeah, so my parents became religious, and I was raised in that community.
Yeah, it's so interesting how that happens. People, whatever the religious orientation is, have kind of a conversion moment. And oh my gosh, the poor kids, they don't get a say in it. They are just now, this is how you are going to be raised. And of course, ultra Orthodox, anything is going to be very, very fundamentalist. And in the case of ultra Orthodox Judaism, I imagine there's no TV, no secular radio. Everybody must conform, even down to the way you dress, what you're allowed to pursue, even as far as interests. I mean, it doesn't seem like there'd be an awful lot of options there.
It is important to recognize that religion is a two-directional, multi-directional, really, journey for a lot of people, right? So there are people who enter that community, and in recognizing that, it would be nice if people could also appreciate the need for people to leave those communities. And I mean, I should say that I was born into that community. I wasn't brought into it later. My family was already religious. So it wasn't a change for me. It was, this was the only community I knew. And, I was born and raised in that community.
Wow. Yeah. What you mentioned makes me think of the turnstile effect, where it can be relatively easy to get into something and then very, very hard to leave. Although I imagine for anyone interested in joining the ultra-Orthodox Jewish community, there are many hoops to jump through. You probably really have to go to lengths to prove your devotion and that this is really what you want, because typically it's a community people are born into.
Yes, I can't relate to the experience of entering into that community, but I'm sure for everyone who makes that decision, it comes with its own hurdles and challenges.
Right. And so were you aware, did you have regular time with your non-ultra Orthodox grandmother before you left? So you already were comfortable with her?
Yes. We saw our family somewhat regularly. And I was very fortunate, again, because it gave me a view into the world that I wanted to enter, as opposed to so many other people who end up having to take this leap into a world that they know nothing about. I can't say I knew a whole lot, but I knew a little bit more because I had family outside of that community. I mean, this is also before the internet was as popular as it is now. And I do think that that's another very interesting phenomenon, because people could learn about the world that they're trying to enter through the internet. Of course, there are challenges sometimes accessing the internet and all of that, but it is available. It is a tool that is available it was available obviously 20 years ago, but it wasn't as accessible, as it is now. People were still using payphones back in,
I don't know if my kids saw a payphone. I'm not even sure they'd know what it was. Things have changed an awful lot, and the internet can be tremendously helpful now for people who are kind of stuck inside these groups. And so then you knew you had family members on the outside. Did you know anyone else who had actually left? Because certainly the messaging that we often receive when we're inside insular groups is you'll end up in the gutter if you leave. You'll turn to the worst ways to make money. Nobody will be there for you. It's unsafe.
Yes. And I think what you're speaking to is many of us learn or know of people who left based on the stories we hear about them, whether or not those stories are, accurate. But I can't say that any of my friends or people I knew closely had left. It was socially, it was a very challenging transition, because I was trying to build a community and a life really outside of the community that I had participated in for so long.
Do you remember some of the things that that struck you as the hardest things to get used to? Are there any off the top of your head? Like, you go from having virtually no freedom to having total freedom, and it can feel overwhelming and scary.
So there are a few things that come to mind. They have to do, with just different foods that were available, clothing options that, we didn't have growing up. So those were some of the physical adjustments, I would say, or just like the day-to-day adjustments. New activities like going to a movie theater or listening to music that was not, generated within the community, or composed, I should say, within that community. So there were a lot of adjustments and changes. I do think that a lot of the challenges, though, are more internal. So trying to adjust to a new set of norms, your own beliefs, your own understanding of the world, of the purpose of life, of community, and of relationships. So those adjustments, I would say, are really the adjustments that took the longest, I would say, and that remain, right, difficult. Like, the food and clothing, it's challenging the first time you're buying, short sleeve shirts and pants and, other things, but like, you get over it after a few, tries, or at least I did. I can't speak for everyone, but like, those are things that you can adjust to a little bit more easily. I think that the real adjustments, the ones that take the most time, are the ones that actually people speak about the least, because it is quite sensational for people to watch and for artists to, or for the mediums out there that are available through which to share stories or accounts to really talk about those external changes. And it's a little harder to talk about the internal changes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So how did you, what helped you in making those changes? So I know, not too long after you liberated yourself, you definitely recognized that there was a need for other people also to receive support. And so you contacted a social worker and started hosting some meetings for people who either were interested in leaving or had left already. Was that support group something that was helpful for you as you dealt with some of these internal changes, or did you find another life philosophy, or what has worked for you?
Absolutely. It's, for many founders, I think the organizations they start are about their personal journeys and needs. And at the time, it was important for me to know that there were other people out there who were making similar choices, and weren't so ashamed that they wouldn't talk to others. And that was important for me, was to see people who were comfortable or proud, even to use a more radical term, right, of the choices that they had made, and weren't, operating under tremendous fear and shame. And bringing people together was a really important way for me to have access to a community of people who were grappling with some of the same things that I was grappling with. So absolutely, I would say that Footsteps came out of, as I said before, my need for a grandmother to help. I knew that I needed it. I knew that other people, I needed her, I should say. Other people needed others around them to support them and encourage them.
And at first, it was just you. When I'm thinking in terms of Footsteps, like, you are the one who started it all in your early 20s. Were you also going to college at that time?
I was,
Wow.
and that was another thing that was, and that was another reason I was inspired to help others, because I knew that, as an example, of the men oftentimes from the ultra-orthodox communities are even less prepared for college. And I knew that I was struggling, and I had a basic education in some ways, a different education than everybody else or many of the people, I would say, who were in college with me, but nevertheless, a little bit more of a secular education particularly more than the men. And I wanted them to have that access to that opportunity as well. So yes, I was in college. It was early on in my journey. There was a lot going on, for sure. And it was challenging to, extricate myself from my own experience at times and try and understand the experiences of others. I think it is what you're reminding me of is the importance of recognizing that even though people come from the same community, their experiences could be quite diverse. It's like, siblings who are raised in the same household. They can have very different experiences of that household, and they can have very different personalities and the ways that it impacts them. So it's very striking just how different people's experiences can be around leaving. And when you're going through it yourself, it's hard at times to recognize that others might not have the same exact needs that you had, may not have the same exact challenges that you had. Not everybody has a hard time buying a short sleeve shirt for the first time, and so it's important to not assume that everybody has those same needs, and that everyone has the same experiences of leaving insular religious communities.
Yes, that is a very good point. And I find support groups can be helpful because it's extremely validating to be in the company of other people who recognize of what we are talking about when we're suffering loss of identity, loss of community, loss of worldview and purpose. Not everybody in the outside world can understand those profound multiple losses, but a group of people who have, maybe they left Scientology, maybe they left whatever the group was, but it was a pretty insular, high demand group. Yes, we can definitely provide support for each other. And I also recognize that there are some real vulnerabilities for those of us who have left, especially when we grew up, with a very particular philosophy or mindset or religious views. And we just assume that's the way it is because that's what our parents taught us. That's what our teachers and religious leaders taught us. And all the other kids that we knew, those were the things they were being taught as well. And to get out then into the real wide world can just feel so shocking. And for people who have also been raised to be extremely honest and extremely trusting and obedient, oh my God, there are a lot of people willing to take advantage. And of course, we see that in religious communities as well, where predators rise to the top and then they are allowed to maintain those positions. But just being out in the world, I remember when I started dating after my religious marriage ended, but it was shocking because I had only been with the one person for almost 20 years, and we had an understanding of things, and we were using the same rule book because we were both reading the Bible. And then I would be interacting with people online, expecting that they were as honest and forthcoming as I was. And there was a lot of heartbreak and tough lessons learned that way. And that is one reason that I started the Divorcing Religion group, because I wanted to try and help prepare people in as gentle a way as possible, but just to let them know these are some of the things that you should be looking out for, because we've been primed to be a certain way. And now we have to be thinking differently and have a broader view of things. So the world isn't necessarily bad by any stretch, but it can be scary. There are dangers out there, and so we can support each other through these things. I don't know if that's it's some kind of thinking that you have also had with Footsteps.
Certainly. Yes. I mean, during the time, I was executive director, for a few years after I founded the organization. I haven't been on staff for a number of years now. But sure, I would say that it was a big priority to figure out how to allow for or to facilitate conversations around some of the concerns and some of the fears and the dangers of the broader world. When someone fights so hard to be a part of a different society, they want to believe that that society is going to be, all good. And there are always going to be hard lessons along the way. And it is troubling when we have to learn ourselves and through experience. But it is nice when other people could share their concerns, so you don't have to find yourself in those situations anew. So that is really important to create conversations around what to expect, when you're entering this new society. And it's difficult too, because it's usually not like a button you press and then you're in a new society and you're confronted with everything. Oftentimes it's a slower transition, it's a progressive, I shouldn't say slow. Everybody has their own pace, but it's a journey. And there are certain hiccups that you're going to run into. And how do we talk about those without scaring people? How do we
giving them a new set of rules that are equally binding and constricting? That's not our place either.
Right. It could be paternalistic, right? It could be, we know how to protect you from this world that maybe we didn't feel super protected in, or others didn't feel super protected in. But we also can't assume that everyone is going to encounter challenges in the same areas where we encounter challenges. And I think that is also a challenge. You want to protect everyone from the pains and the hurts and the disappointments that you faced, or that I faced, right? But sometimes it does encourage you to, or puts you in a position where you're protecting someone from themselves. And that's not a good thing either.
Right. Yeah. I am curious, Malkie. So you went into law, you became an attorney. Was that, you see motivations there related to the things that had gone on to your life, or is that something you had always been interested in, law?
That's something interesting to reflect on, because for many people, the legal world, I think, represents rules, right? And another
And
set
power.
and power. And why would I replace one set of rules for another one? For me, after I left, I saw laws as protection, right? And even when there are laws, it doesn't mean people are protected. And the example that comes to mind is obviously substantial equivalency in New York, where students are entitled to a substantially equivalent education, substantially equivalent to what is offered in the public schools. And yet we know that there are many children who grow up without learning basic English and math and having physical education and everything else that comes along with a well-rounded education.
Mm-hmm.
And so even when there are laws, it doesn't guarantee protection, but it is fundamental to having protection, is just having laws on your side. We need to have laws on our side. So that's how I saw the legal profession and continue to see the legal profession. It doesn't always play out that way. But I do still value the importance of the legal system in protecting the rights of people who are in religious communities and who are leaving them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the legal system remains one of our most powerful tools, and something that is so important. And things are shifting in the United States, with the former person about to step back into the Oval Office and taking with him, or really having a platform that seems very fundamentalist. As far as we know, there are a lot of, I refer to them as Christian supremacists, but, Christian nationalists, white Christian nationalists, who are very much interested in pushing their own agenda. And that means times are going to get tougher for women, for minorities, for anyone who doesn't adhere closely to those rules as they set them out to be. So that is a concern. And so I'm really grateful that there are attorneys like you in the United States who care about people and care about their rights. And I wonder if we could switch just a little bit, and if you would talk about Rights and Religions Forum. So how did that come up? You had something to do with the founding of that organization as well?
Yes. So it was a group, a small group of founders who were from various religious denominations. And there were, we had some conversations about the challenges and opportunities and questions and triumphs that come from running and starting an organization that helps people from very diverse insular religious groups. And what we realized is that while religious communities are very different and actually quite insular and don't interact with each other, there was an opportunity, and there is an opportunity, to really build common ground across, religious lines around this experience of leaving insular religious groups. So while someone who grows up like I did in an ultra-orthodox community may never have had an interaction with someone from an insular Muslim, Amish, Jehovah's Witness, or other insular religious group, there are ways in which I can relate to them and they can relate to me that others in the outside world may not be able to relate to me on. So as an example, I do think most, if not all, insular religious groups have rules around some of the very basic and fundamental aspects of life, including, right, clothing, we mentioned that earlier, food, we mentioned that earlier, just, activities, day-to-day activities.
Sexuality, for sure.
For sure. Just relationships, generally, just lots of rules around the same aspects of life. And so when someone is, leaving one belief about sexuality, as you mentioned, oftentimes there's someone else who's leaving another, right, belief system around sexuality that may be very similar and also have some differences, but where you relate and where the common ground is the fact that you are trying to build your own understanding of sexuality that is different from where we were raised. And that is something that I think brings people together, even when they are from very diverse religious backgrounds.
Yes. Oh, for sure. I've so enjoyed participating in the fellowship and some of the backgrounds of other fellows in the Borgenicht Fellowship. So I've come out of Pentecostalism and Holdeman Mennonite background. We also have people in the group who've come out of ultra-orthodox Judaism, Islam, Amish, Mormonism. They're really groups that are quite diverse, but all have the kind of ultra fundamentalist flavor to them. So not everybody necessarily, maybe in some of those groups, moves towards fundamentalism. Some of them are maybe there's potential there to be more progressive, but not all. I mean, if you're Amish, you're Amish. So it's just been interesting learning from those other people, their backgrounds that they come out of, and some of the concerns that we have, because all of us are public facing regarding what we've come out of and what we're trying to do. And that can be scary. I mean, in the age of social media and, keyboard warrior type people and trolls, and sometimes it can feel unsafe. And it's so helpful to be able to gather in the fellowship group and talk about some of these concerns that we have. So I'm grateful for the fellowship, and I feel like the other members also are. We're so happy just to know each other now, because we're working towards similar goals. We want people to be free to live their lives as they see fit.
Yes. That is the Borgenicht Fellowship Program is really the core program of Rights and Religions Forum right now. And it really is about bringing people together who are challenging the status quo in insular religious communities, and from very diverse insular religious communities, as you said. The idea is because there's a shared understanding of everyone having had a unique journey to where they are now, and the shared desire to help others from insular religious communities. That is something that all of the fellows share. And so it is nice to have, and really important, I think, to have a place where people who are working really hard day in and day out to make change on behalf of people in insular religious communities, just to have some space to come together and as I was talking about earlier, share in the triumphs that, we have, in addition to the challenges and the real dilemmas that come up as well.
Mm-hmm. And it's true that we never know what we are capable of until we actually try. So it was one thing for you and for each of us in the fellowship to leave those groups. Like that was a massive hurdle, took a lot of courage in itself. But we didn't stop there. You didn't stop there. You saw a need, because it was also a need that you had. And you looked around and saw, well, I don't see anyone else meeting this need. Therefore, I guess I'll step in and I will do what I can to get the ball rolling and meet this need. And frankly, I feel like there are a lot of women who end up doing that, stepping into that space where we are used to it. We're not strangers to it. We learn to make do, and we are creative and resilient, and we are powerful. We're especially powerful when we work together. So big shout out to the other fellowship members and to anyone who's listening to this program today, who is either thinking of leaving their group or has already left. We want you to know that you're not alone. We see you and we're here for you. Can anybody reach out to Rights and Religions Forum? So you guys have a website. What sorts of things do you do besides the fellowship, or is Rights and Religions still quite new and you're just testing the waters and figuring out where you're needed most and what you could do?
So it is a relatively new organization. We started in 2019, really. And the idea was just to bring people together for a conference and a convening. And at those convenings, we began to hear about the need for support for those who are making change. And that's how the fellowship was born. And the fellowship itself is, we're hoping to grow it. And so if you are a change maker and you're listening and you're thinking about how to make an impact for others, I do hope you'll reach out to us. We will likely be opening up a new application round for fellows very soon. So I encourage everyone to visit the website and follow us on social media. And I do look forward to meeting and working with and just hearing about, the ideas of various change makers of all ages and backgrounds and all the ideas that people have to really support the community of people from insular religious groups who are trying to build a life that, as you said earlier, is consistent with their own personal values, needs, and beliefs. So if you're interested in making change, then this organization may be a really nice fit and community for you. We are trying to bring people together, whether or not they're in the fellowship too. So you don't have to be a fellow to be a part of the community of change makers. And so you can certainly reach out and we will be happy to welcome you in whatever way would be helpful and possible.
Wow, that's just so beautiful. And you also are still an attorney. That's still your field that you work in. Do you mainly work with groups rather than individuals? I know there's all sorts of different ways lawyers can practice law.
My full-time job has nothing to do with the experience of leaving an insular religious group.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. What I do with Rights and Religions Forum is a hobby. It's not, obviously it's more than that because I feel very strongly about it. Not something I'm, paid for as an employee. It's all something I'm doing as a volunteer.
It's a passion.
It's a passion, and it's a community for me too, as you mentioned earlier. So, my job has nothing to do with this particular experience.
I see. Okay. Wow. That is, I mean, that's even more amazing, I think, in some ways, because then you already have this part of your life, as we all do, 9 to 5, that we're working. It takes a lot of energy, a lot of thought. But then with the precious limited time and energy that you have after career stuff, this is where you choose to focus it, to be a support to other people and to help other people on their journeys away from insular religious groups. That's wonderful. No wonder I like you so much.
Well, it's mutual. For sure. I really do respect, as you said, many change makers are women. And I really do have tremendous respect for all the women and men out there who are trying so hard to make change. And I do remember what it was like to start an organization and not have a community of change makers around me. And, the limited wisdom I can offer, wisdom and experience, right? The cautionary tales, as we discussed earlier. The limited number of those that I can share to help others, I would like to do that and continue to do that. And continue to learn from fellow change makers, because we're all out there in a changing world trying to figure out how to make the greatest impact that we can. And, I also just want to recognize, there are very generous donors who are making this fellowship possible, and really invested in making sure that all of our fellows and that change makers are feeling supported and given very practical tools and resources to make a difference. In addition to the, feel good, nice, supportive community that we're trying to build, we also know that it's important to receive very practical support. And that is what the fellowship aims to do, is to provide both. And the generosity of donors allows us to do that.
Excellent. Yes. And so in the show notes, we'll definitely include a link to Rights and Religions Forum and also to Footsteps. I mean, they're both interesting, both powerful groups, organizations helping people who need help. I think this pretty much covers most of the things that I was wondering about. How can people reach you, or would they do best just to go through the websites that I'll be leaving in the show notes?
Yes, I would say definitely utilize the website. We can also include an email address if you think that would be helpful. But I do hope people will go to the website and support, as you said, Rights and Religions Forum and Footsteps. Footsteps is doing incredible work. I haven't been working there since 2009, so it's been quite some time. But it's under the leadership of some incredible, dedicated staff and board members who are working really hard to make an impact for people from insular ultra-orthodox Jewish communities. So I appreciate your interest in making sure that organization gets support as well.
Yes, absolutely. And we've mentioned support and support groups. And so this is the time also for me to mention that I do run a free online religious trauma syndrome support group Tuesday nights for people who feel like they need some support or want some support around this journey that they are making. Making decisions for ourselves that are new to us, or just different questions that can come up and challenges and victories along the way. It's so nice to be able to share those with people. So folks can go to divorcingreligion.com. And I also do need to just mention I'm excited to be hosting the Shameless Sexuality Life After Purity Culture Conference in person in 2025, May of 2025. That will be happening in Seattle. So people can go to shamelesssexuality.org to learn more about that, because overcoming some of the purity culture toxic messaging that we received in our insular religious groups is a big deal. It's not something to be ignored. Malkie, thank you so much for joining me today. It was a pleasure. I feel like I know you just a little bit more now than I did before. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Janice, for having me today and for everything you are doing. Really, for those of us from insular religious communities, you are doing so much, and it's clearly very much needed. And I know the hard work and the thoughtful reflection that you do about your work to make sure that it continues to make an impact for people. So thank you so much.
Oh, that feels so good to hear you say that. Thank you. Okay, everyone, thanks for joining us today, and we'll see you again soon. Take care.